correspondent Julie Sirkin and NBC News national law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter. Thanks to both of you for being here today. Julie, let me start with you. House Speaker Mike Johnson met with the Epstein survivors yesterday, along with Oversight Committee members. What has the Speaker's role been in this whole standoff?
Well, too often the Speaker hopes for, he's again stuck in a difficult position, Kristen, as you know, he often is, because the White House in this case wants this issue to go away. They want this Epstein matter to completely go away, and it's not going to. We saw the survivors press conference this morning, but we also, of course, have dual efforts going on in the House right under Speaker Johnson's nose. One in the Oversight Committee, where, of course, we know James Comer, as you mentioned, is pushing for those files and is slowly receiving them. But also this discharge petition, Speaker Johnson trying to get those Republicans that potentially are open to it not to sign on to it, in large part saying that this is personal between Thomas Massie, who is the top Republican in charge of that effort, but also saying the administration, look, they're already being compliant. They're turning over all of these documents. Take a listen to what he said.
They're already producing and putting out there the documents that are uncovered. The White House is in full compliance. The administration is willfully complying with the subpoenas because they want maximum transparency as well. I talked to the president himself last night about this. He says, get it out there, put it all out there. So this is going to be an ongoing effort. It will be bipartisan, which is great. And the Oversight Committee's effort, this is really important to point out, goes further than the discharge petition.
Johnson is saying he wants transparency. He's saying the president wants transparency. I asked Leader Thune, the top Republican on the Senate side, what he's doing. And he too, Kristen, says they're all for transparency, but there's a difference between what they say and what they do. And certainly if Johnson wanted this to go forward, if he wanted to force the administration's hand, the DOJ's hand on releasing this, he could, but he doesn't. And that is why you're seeing this effort in the form of a discharge petition.
Well, just to follow up on that point, Julie, Thomas Massie, Ro Khanna expressing a lot of confidence that they're going to get the 218 signatures needed for that discharge position. But as you say, Massie's got to convince some of his Republican colleagues there to sign on to this petition. Based on your conversations with sources, how likely is it that he can get enough Republicans to secure support for this?
Well, that's the big question, because you certainly see the emotional testimony, how difficult it is for these survivors, some of whom are speaking for the very first time, to come here, to put themselves out there like this. But what will it lead to? And certainly the answer to that question is getting those 218 signatures on the discharge petition, because even though James Comer of the Oversight Committee says, yes, look, we're continuously receiving these documents. They released 30,000, as you said, pages of them yesterday. He said today that they'll continue to get more from the DOJ. These survivors are just not buying it, and neither is Thomas Massie or Ro Khanna or Marjorie Taylor Greene, who stood with them today. I did notice one Republican in that at that press conference who did not sign on to the discharge petition. That is Victoria Spartz. I tried talking to her about this. She still seems like she's deciding what to do, but it will be an uphill road for Massie to get even two more Republicans, in part because some who were even open to this, like Tim Burchett, for example, now says he's not going to sign on to it because the Oversight Committee is receiving these documents from DOJ. So it'll be an uphill battle for Massie. It doesn't help either that Speaker Johnson and President Trump are painting him as a thorn in the side of their efforts and the Republican leadership as a whole, as he's trying to solicit partners and friends on his side of the aisle to sign on to this.
Yeah, it's a real standoff with the president, Julie. There's no doubt about that. Tom, let me head over to you. Julie painted that full picture of what is unfolding on Capitol Hill. She talked about the 30,000 pages of documents that were released overnight. What exactly is the key takeaway from those documents, Tom? Has anything new been discovered in those documents?
You know, Kristen, it was exactly what we kind of anticipated, thanks to the reporting of myself and our colleagues there next to you in our D.C. bureau, focusing on what the Justice Department would have handed over. And out of that 33,000 pages of documents, there's really only a handful of documents that we have not seen before. Most of these documents have to do with public court filings. They have to do with documents that were, you're looking at it right there, something that was docketed in the Ghislaine Maxwell case. We're looking at documents that were produced as part Florida of the original Palm Beach Police Department investigation in Florida, which was quite thorough, really kind of trying to drive state prosecutors to initially charge Epstein before Palm Beach Police and the police chief at the time contacted the FBI because they weren't so sure what Florida state prosecutors were doing with it. And then we also saw documents that were contained as part of the review into the suicide of Jeffrey Epstein at the jail. But again, all of that are materials that we've seen before. It was just a handful of documents that had to do with Epstein's travels in the years leading up to his arrest and then his death by suicide that was new. On that, though, they used exemptions that they would use if they were producing those materials to be via FOIA, so that any third party name that was traveling with Epstein during that period, those names were redacted, Kristen.
So, Tom, one of the survivors there speaking today suggested, why not just release the files to the survivors? Is that something that's being discussed at DOJ?
Yeah, I don't think that's something that's really going to carry water, because the problem with that is that then it's a public release of information. We're technically entitled, all of us are technically entitled to it. There's no way for the Justice Department to kind of put that out there in a way that couldn't be put out by various receivers of that information in whatever fashion the receivers wanted to put it into. Certainly the victims here have advocated, we heard about it all morning long, advocated for transparency, for as many documents out there as possible. So I don't think it's something where they would be cherry-picked and given to us that way. But on the other hand, it sets a precedent for the Justice Department that would be very difficult. So there's no indication, I think, that they would just share that with them. It would also potentially be improper if they were eventually going to bring a prosecution or new information came to light. They would be prejudiced by the materials that they had already seen, even though the Justice Department says there's not even enough information to open an investigation into any potential third parties. So those are all the types of legal considerations. There was brought up today at that press conference the amount of documents that were redacted. Well, those were redacted pursuant to court orders or court rules, or were sealed pursuant to court orders or court rules. That's not something Congress can get by. That's something that judges will have to handle, the judiciary will have to handle in these cases. So again, more kind of roadblocks that are out there. It's going to be difficult going forward for more documents to be provided unless DOJ goes really outside of their traditional policies and practices, Kristen.
All right, Julie and Tom, great reporting. Thank you for starting us off today. We really appreciate it.